Hey everyone, I'm Leanne Vogel, the host of the Keto Diet Podcast, a holistic nutritionist, and the best-selling author of The Keto Diet, The Keto Diet Cookbook, and Keto for Women. And today is episode 313 of the Keto Diet Podcast. I'm joined today by Dr. Dana Elia. She is the author of the Stem Cell Activation Diet and the Sugar Detox Diet. And today we're talking about stem cells, which I don't know much about. So it was really fun to ask a bunch of basic questions about stem cells, autophagy, which we're very familiar with, the ketogenic diet, the role of the ketogenic diet in fasting mimicking, how stem cells work, how it relates to our aging process, why this is important when we're talking about inflammation and a whole bunch of other things. And then we end things off with sugar. Little topping of talking about removing sugar and why it's super important, and a different approach that you've probably not heard about as it relates to removing sugar from your life. So I think you're going to want to listen to the very end. Before we get to today's interview, I want to take a quick second to thank our two sponsors for today's show. The first is Eaton Hemp. They make just great stuff. CBD products, hemp products. You guys can find out more by clicking that link right there, and also some information down below. And then we also have Element, who makes amazing. I know I always say amazing. I only work with awesome companies. What I love about Element is they make electrolyte powder that's super salty, doesn't have fillers, gunk, sweetener, garbage in it. It's just straight up electrolytes, some really good flavors, love them to bits. My favorite flavor is unflavored because I'm boring like that, but they have a bunch of other cool flavors. So I will include some information below on that. Also, Dr. Dana has a website, some books, some really great resources, including her email address, which she shared at the end if you want to reach out to her. I did warn her there might be quite a few emails that she's going to get, but she said to go for it. So you can find all that down below. Okay, let's cut over to today's interview. Hello, Dr. Dana. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm so good. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, of course. So I've already done your professional bio, but I'd love in your words to tell us who you are, what you do, what you're most passionate about, and just give us a taste of your work.
So, I'm most passionate about nutrition. I've been an integrative and functional dietitian nutritionist for 25 years. I'm also a doctor of clinical nutrition. Most passionate about helping people live healthier, better lives. I went into the field of nutrition because of my own struggles with my weight and with autoimmune disease. So originally I wanted to go pre-med, but by the time I was ready to enter college, I had recognized that, living essentially in a primary care physician's office and having visited so many specialists for my own healthcare, I recognized that something had to give, something had to be different. And thus I switched gears and went into nutrition. And thus I've been my own progressive case study as time has gone on over the last 25 years. So.
That's amazing. And what autoimmune conditions did you have or do you still have that you live with?
So I have rheumatoid arthritis. When I was in my early 20s, they also tried to slap on a lupus diagnosis and fibromyalgia. Um, However, I don't personally identify with those diagnoses. The RA, yes, is definitely the most present. But in terms of laboratory markers and tests for lupus, for SLE, they've been kind of borderline. So predominantly it's rheumatoid arthritis that I've struggled with since childhood.
And how does your personal experience kind of inform the work that you've done and kind of the books that you've written? And I can't wait to talk about each one of them. And how has that informed the work that you do today?
Because literally nutrition has been what has kept me out of the doctor's office for years, and off of medication. So when I was first diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis as a child, that began the downward spiral of lots of blood tests, lots of doctor's visits, and a whole plethora of different medications, many of which had more side effects than they did benefits. And throughout, elementary school and high school, it was this, constant cascade of just weight-related issues because of the high doses of steroids that I was on, IBS, and stomach issues because of, lingering and continual trials of various NSAIDs. Also, I had recurrent bouts of strep infections. So I had the lingering impact of, multiple years of multiple doses of antibiotics. So from a functional medicine, in particular a functional nutrition perspective, I literally was the perfect case study to see how, food as medicine and using the power of nutrition really can heal the body, and help to maintain your health status. So, I've been off of all of my RA meds for close to 20 years, and it's really, diet and lifestyle that keeps me healthy and keeps me out of the conventional medicine offices.
Yeah, that's so great. Congratulations. And to really inform yourself also is such a huge, huge deal, I'm sure, on a daily basis. You probably don't even think anymore of boop, boop, beep, boop, boop, gotta do this to keep this going. And that's just really cool. And something that you said too, I think a lot of people, it's this delicate balance with medication. And there are some medications that are so, so, so required, especially when you're in the heat of the moment and you just need those things. But I think a lot of us don't realize the effects that NSAIDs or SSRIs or all sorts of things can have long term on things other than the condition. Can you talk a little bit about that and what you see in your practice today?
And I certainly don't want to give the impression that I'm, anti-medication. What I am in favor of it is really narrowing down and drilling down to the root causes of the health issues that somebody is dealing with. And, oftentimes medications can just be more of a band-aid, treating the symptoms rather than treating the root causes. So that's where, you kind of walk this fine line between, is treating the symptoms, is there greater benefit with that? But, what are some of the potential risks of side effects? So that's where I think that you can definitely marry the two, that, if your healthcare practitioner is recommending a medication course or a pharmaceutical treatment, and you want to begin with that, that's fine. But, don't forget to still explore what are some of the root causes, because personally I feel there's always the hope. And, nutrition and healthcare needs to be highly personalized and individualized. But for myself and my patients that I work with, I always encourage them to, continue to look for how can we support the body and support healing. So that way there's the possibility of potentially reducing their reliance upon pharmacological agents, or, in cases helping them to eventually no longer need those medications. So
Mm,
in my
and
case, the NSAIDs, the antibiotics, they had wreaked a lot of havoc on my microbiome. So, my whole immune system, my gut microbiome was a mess. And that just led to, weight-related issues, joint pain, exacerbating the inflammatory process, also wreaking havoc on my adrenals and my thyroid. So it just, set in motion that downward spiral.
and at what point in your process of education and healing your body were you like, stem cells? This there's something to this. Like, what was that transition like for you?
So I've always been really interested in, some of the more, left of center type of therapies, and research. So I had been following the research on fasting and fasting mimicking diets and stem cell activation, was always really fascinated by it. Then I had gotten to the point where personally I had an injury to my left elbow, my lateral epicondyle, as most people consider, tennis elbow, and nutrition, physical therapy, supportive supplementation. After 9 months of that, I really wasn't seeing any improvement. And I was actually working with a more integrative minded physical therapist. And we both sat down and he said, I think you really need to spend some time with the orthopedist. So I went through that whole process, had an MRI, which my orthopedist had labeled an across the room MRI, that he was able to tell from across the room looking at the film just how damaged the tendon was, and that surgery was not going to be avoided at all. So that's where we started having the discussion about stem cell injections or PRP. What were some of the options there? I do have a history of having had a rare sarcoma. So I did reach out to my oncologist about, the potential for stem cell therapies to repair that tendon. And unfortunately, because of how rare of the sarcoma that I had had, there's absolutely no data whatsoever on, injectable stem cells. And from a risk benefit ratio, lateral epicondyle surgeries are a dime a dozen, very little risk, very high rewards, as opposed to opting for some sort of injectable stem cell therapy. So long story short, I opted for the surgery to repair my tendon, but I also was looking at dietary interventions to activate stem cells. So that's where I did end up, I had already done some fasting mimicking diet rounds previously, but decided to do another round right before surgery, and had some really interesting results. And hindsight being 2020, I wish there had been a way to do a pre and post fasting mimicking program MRI. But needless to say, the day of surgery in the recovery room, the orthopedist came out and said, "I can't exactly explain this. You still needed surgery, but I don't understand how there was such a marked difference in your tendon from just 2 weeks ago." And I said, "Well, let me tell you what I did." And it was amazing just, how quickly a round of a stem cell activating fasting mimicking protocol had stimulated some healing in the tendon. So, it just further cemented the power that diet, lifestyle, and nutrition can play on healing the body. Fast forward another year or so later, came the opportunity from a publisher to write a book. And there was a couple of different topics that they were interested in, and one of them was on activating stem cells. So I said, yeah, that I'm definitely interested in. I've followed the research, I've lived it myself. I've experimented on myself. I always have. I will rarely recommend a supplement or a diet or anything to a client or a patient unless I've tried it myself. Even as a dietetic intern years ago, I was the one who was trying all of the supplements that we were asking patients to drink. So I wouldn't expect somebody else to follow something that I couldn't or wouldn't follow or do myself. But long story short, that conversation ended up in the book. so stem cell activation diet. And, basically it was written to help people who obviously can't afford or may not be candidates for injectable stem cell therapies. How can you use your innate power within your body to activate the stem cells that are still residing within you, and really harness them to allow for healing and to reduce inflammation, to increase your longevity, to promote healthy aging, and overall help to optimize your stem cells and live a healthier life.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So for
There's
those
a
that
lot
don't
there.
know, oh my goodness, this is so exciting. So for those that don't know, what is the role of a stem cell? Like you said, to heal, reduce inflammation, increase longevity. Like, does everyone have stem cells, and
We
why aren't
do.
they doing these things on their own?
Yep, we do have, stem cells within our body. And the beauty is, stem cells are our body's miracle workers, because they can give rise to any type of cell in the body. So, that's the beauty of the stem cell, is they can ultimately become whatever type of cell the body needs. And that's part of the aging process. Is, as we begin to age, your stem cells kind of, start to slack on the job. And that's where, as part of, um, supporting healthy aging and longevity, and even, reducing pain, helping to heal the body, we want to kind of give them a nudge, wake them up, encourage them to, do their job and to activate. And that's how you can support them through your diet.
So I'm assuming that what I'm hearing from you is that we all have stem cells, but they may not be activated, or there may not be a ton of them because of our diet, lifestyle, all the things we're doing to kind of stop them from doing the work that they can do.
Well, your diet and lifestyle definitely can have a negative impact on the action of your stem cells. Um, Environmental exposures as well. Essentially, like that standard American diet and standard American lifestyle, you're really not supporting your stem cells to do their optimal job. On the flip side, we can, take some steps to eat a healthier diet, exercise, and use, certain types of dieting styles or dieting regimens to really kick those stem cells into high gear, to encourage them to be activated and to actually encourage a process in the body called autophagy, which is really, kind of like spring cleaning of cells in the body. So autophagy is really to encourage older cells that are kind of on their way out. It really encourages them to die off, allow your body to clear them out, and thus bring in newer, younger, healthier cells, which is what you want when you're encouraging longevity, healthy aging, and trying to heal.
Brilliant. And so you wrote a whole book about activating these stem cells. Where does, like you mentioned, fasting mimicking, how does that come into all of this with activating our stem cells and the ketogenic diet?
So there's a couple of ways that we can activate stem cells through diet. The ones that we see most research supported in the scientific literature is through fasting. So whether you're doing a variety of different fasting programs, and we know fasting means different things to different people, but a 24-hour fast is generally necessary to start activating stem cells for folks that might have been following a regular diet. Caloric restriction can also be another method to support and activate stem cells. Yes, the ketogenic diet, there's evidence supporting the use of ketosis and being in ketosis, and thus a ketogenic diet to support stem cells. But the thing is, I think where folks get a misconception is, how long to follow these programs. And you don't want to be in a continual state of stem cell activation, because like most things, too much of a good thing in turn ends up being a bad thing. So that's where when we look at stem cell activating programs, they're meant to be short-term regimens, and then it's how you eat and how you live after the period of activating stem cells is what really supports the lifespan of those healthier, newer, younger cells that were created as the end result of your stem cell activation program. And that's where a ketogenic diet can definitely be a long-term sustainable program, as long as you're following a healthy keto diet. So, like there's varying degrees of healthfulness for a vegan diet, a plant-based diet, a paleo diet, whatever diet title or diet style somebody subscribes to. The real key is the healthfulness, the quality of the foods that you're eating that are falling under that label that you're identifying with. So, for example, a bag of Lay's potato chips and a can of Diet Coke technically can, constitute a vegan diet. That doesn't necessarily mean it's healthy. Many patients that I've worked with over the years have identified as being vegetarian, and then you look at their food logs and they're really just a starchitarian. There's very little vegetables per se in their food logs. So, whatever diet you identify with, you want to make sure that you're following the healthy version of it, not the dirty version.
Completely. Yes, 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 yes to everything you just said. And also that this seems to be a theme with so many of the individuals I'm having on the show this year. And that is too much of a good thing doesn't make it a better thing.
Right.
And I think, too often, as health conscious people, we think, well, if fasting twice a week is good for me, well, then doing 24-hour fasts every other day forever and ever is a better thing. And I think I see that also in my practice of like, we just get so stuck in our ways that we forget that just like it sounds like stem cell activation, there are seasons for it and there are seasons that are not for it. And that's what I hear you saying also. And it's been a constant theme this year of just redefining what these things are. And I think it's also important that we define what keto is. And you're so right. I'll never forget the year was 2014 and I was on Instagram looking at things and I saw hashtag keto for the first time. And I was like, what's a keto? Clicked on that hashtag and oh dear, there was like Slim Jims and sour cream and Diet Coke. And yeah, it fits your macros and that's great. But beyond that, it's the quality and what these micronutrients, if they're there, are doing for your body. It's a really, really important thing. So I'm really happy that you touched on that also.
And I think that's part of the reason why for the naysayers against keto, because there's been so many adulterations of keto in the media and people doing, the dirty keto forms, that gives rise to, so much negativity about it. And I'm a firm believer that, you know, there is no one size fits all approach. There's not even a one size fits most when it comes to diet and finding the diet that fits you best. For my husband and I, we follow drastically different eating styles, but we both subscribe to, the style of diet that supports us best and has us feeling most well. So, fortunately, that narrows down to us only having about one meal a day together. So we're not having to cook multiple meals. But, at the end of the day, you really want to explore and experiment with a variety of different style of healthful diets to determine what has you feeling most well. Keto can work wonders for a vast number of people, but there's also a significant number of folks that, for one reason or another, keto may not necessarily work best with their genetics and their metabolism and their current state of affairs. That doesn't mean that, keto doesn't work or it's a bad diet. It may not just, it's just not the right fit for that particular individual. So, that's where I encourage clients, don't be afraid to be your own Sherlock Holmes and to, explore and learn what works best for your body. We've spent so much time not necessarily honing in on the signals that our bodies try to give us when things aren't working well. We need to listen more clearly and be more mindful of what signals our body is trying to tell us. So, and that can help you to determine what style of diet is going to be best. And it may not necessarily fit into one particular bucket of, paleo, primal, keto, Mediterranean, whatever label you want to give it. It's not about labels. It's about optimizing what works best for you.
Yeah, and that process is a very humbling process and requires you to drop your pride also. It's like, it's not technically keto, but it's like as keto as I can be right now. And like, maybe that's okay. I always say, I'll never forget, I got attacked when I went from vegan over to more of a a ketogenic diet. Somebody said, yeah, but you can't have collagen as a vegan. And I was like, vegan is just a word. It's just a word that we added a bunch of meanings to, but like ultimately, You kind of got to drop your pride, get humble, and make adjustments, is what I'm hearing you say, to benefit your body. And it's always going to be something a little bit different. Like the eating style that we had 3 years ago is going to be very different than the one we had 10 years ago, which is going to be
Absolutely.
different than one that I'm going to need in a year as our
Yeah,
body is changing.
absolutely. I mean, the type of diet that I follow today is nowhere near the style of diet that I was following 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
Mm.
So, it is a continual evolutionary process that, as I get older and as my body has changed, I've needed to make adjustments to, my workouts, the type of food I eat, the timing of my meals, my supplements. That's, think of it as we change our wardrobe by the seasons. We should be mindful of how we're changing our diet, and even if you are using supportive supplementation under the guidance of a clinician, you want to address that too. You don't want to, just stay status quo.
Completely. Now, you mentioned autophagy a little while ago, and this is like, maybe you know, maybe you don't. But this question always comes up when we talk autophagy and a ketogenic diet. Does it matter if you've been on keto, and does autophagy take like shorter of a time to start working because we're already in a ketogenic diet, or are the two related or not? What have you seen in your research as it results or as it relates to I'm on a ketogenic diet. I want to increase autophagy. Studies say it's going to take about 24 hours, but does it really take that long if we're already keto? Do you know?
So, can vary by the individual. So, getting into ketosis is also part of the process that stimulates autophagy. But for people who have been, long-term keto dieters, that doesn't necessarily mean that, as long as you're in ketosis, you're going to be having this constant autophagy. You don't want that to happen either. um, so if you've already been in ketosis, you can still support autophagy by adding in the additional layers that we know will, stimulate stem cell. And that's where layering in a level of a fast, whether it's a time restricted feeding or maybe even a 24-hour fast, will help to kick that up. We know caloric restriction also helps. So you may need to utilize a blend of, fast caloric restriction to also support the degree of ketosis that you're in. So, and I think for followers of keto, if you're not measuring your blood ketones, we kind of get lulled into this just assumption, oh, I've been following keto for an extended period of time. I'm only eating X amount of grams of net carbs or total carbs, whatever you're choosing to measure. But if you're really not measuring your blood glucose and blood ketones, you're not truly going to be able to tell exactly what degree of ketosis you're in. So you might be making some assumptions, and we know what happens when you assume. So um, if you're trying to biohack things as much as possible, you might want to invest in a glucometer that will also measure your ketones, so that way you can also make more informed decisions about how you want to support autophagy and stem cell activation.
Brilliant, brilliant. And so let's paint a picture here. So I activate my stem cells, things are going well. Then what? Do I look younger, and do I have less inflammation? Like what's the end goal, and kind of what can I expect by prioritizing stem cell activation?
So whether you're using a fasting stem cell activating program, a fasting mimicking diet, short spurts of high degrees of ketosis, caloric restriction, however you're activating your stem cells, there are going to be some metrics that can be measured if you are going to be following up with some laboratory values. So you will see reduction in inflammatory markers, so like C-reactive protein. We'll even see reductions in pro-inflammatory cytokines. If you're doing repeated rounds of stem cell activation, and that can vary depending upon what the individual's needs are. So for me personally, I'll do a round of a fasting mimicking program for stem cells every quarter. So, I try to do it roughly 3 to 4 times per year, depending upon how the year plays out. This year, with all the added stress of COVID, I did a couple extra rounds just because we needed it. But at the end of the day, over time, you will see improvements in the markers that we know contribute negatively to the aging process. So reduction in weight, reduction in LDL levels, reduction in stress hormones. So if you're somebody who's been dealing with overproduction of cortisol, this can also help improve hormonal balance. Inflammation is markedly decreased. We also see improvements in blood glucose levels. So for folks that may be struggling with glucose regulation, if you are someone who's already diagnosed with diabetes, that's a whole separate conversation about whether or not a fasting mimicking program or a stem cell program, you definitely want to do that supervised rather than trying to, fly solo on it. But we know that, cellular maintenance and cellular protection mechanisms are increased, and your stress resistant responses are also improved. So, over the long haul, you're going to see just, at a cellular level, multiple improvements as a result of your stem cell program.
Brilliant.
And healthy aging and longevity. Yeah, I mean,
yeah, and that
that's
was
a
going to be
win-win.
my next question is on aging of like, so you go to the doctor and you're saying, this and that is happening. And they're like, welcome to being 50. At what point is it okay to accept like I'm aging and things are going to change? And when is it not okay? And it's kind of just like that basket, that every symptom gets thrown into as, you're just aging, deal with it. What has been your experience in your practice as it relates to aging?
Well, aging is a normal, healthy process as long as it's normal aging. But you certainly don't have to throw in the towel and just lie down and give in. There are things that we can do to take control over how well our body ages, and that's where doing the homework and really doing the assessment and taking a deep look inside personally and thinking about how well am I sleeping, how much stress am I exposed to, how do I handle the stress in my daily life, how active am I, how much movement am I getting, what's the quality of the air that I'm breathing, the quality of the water that I'm drinking, the quality of the lights and the amount of blue light that I'm being exposed to on a daily basis. And most of all, what am I putting in my body? Because food is so much more than just calories. It's information, and it's information to your cells. So the quality of the information that you're putting in is directly going to be relational to what your body's putting out. So, if you're putting garbage in, you can't expect to age gracefully and look like $1,000,000 if you're eating junk food and frequenting the drive-throughs. So, you can control to a certain extent, how quickly or how slowly you age. So, if you want to age more gracefully and healthfully and slowly, then, take a look at your lifestyle choices and what are the factors that you do have control over. There may be some that you may not be able to exert a whole lot of control or maybe no control over. Then work with the variables that you can take control over. Mostly what's passing your lips. What are you putting into the body? And focus on your diet and focus on your lifestyle choices. And that's where you can really grab hold of the reins of aging and kind of pull back and slow things down.
Brilliant. And I think this whole conversation lends to where I'd love to take the rest of our interview today, which is sugar. Like, if you're still eating sugar, none of this is possible. What has been your experience with clients, with yourself when it comes to sugar?
Oh my gosh. If you want to be on the fast track to not aging gracefully, keep eating sugar. I mean, sugar really is one of the most pro-inflammatory foods out there. and sugar is more addictive than heroin and cocaine. So that's, but yet it's so prevalent and present in our food supply, and we don't do a good enough job of educating people, particularly the younger generations, of just how damaging sugar really can be. So, which, my second book is coming out in March, and it's aimed specifically towards the 50 and over crowd, but it's all about sugar detoxing, and not detoxing in a quick fix, immediately break up with sugar. It's really more about a slow, steady, more gradual, realistic long-term lifestyle change to remove sugar from the diet and help to reduce inflammation, lose weight, reduce pain, and support healthier aging for the 50 and over crowd. As my 50 and over card is coming not so far around the corner. So, um, but sugar really can make or break the healthfulness of your current state of health and wellness. So if you're somebody who is dealing with weight, with a lot of pain, with a lot of stress, with sleep issues, and you find yourself gravitating towards sugar, there are some biological mechanisms that are triggering why you might be gravitating more towards sugar. But unfortunately, it's just that vicious cycle. The more sugar that you eat, the more unwell you're going to be. So, yes, sugar tastes great, but unfortunately, it's not going to support your health or wellness goals. So, at the end of the day, we kind of have to break up with it.
And I'd love to understand why 50 plus for your book, and kind of what was the thought around that, and how a sugar detox for somebody in their 20s is completely different from somebody in their 50s, and why you chose to really hyper focus on that age group.
Because when people hit 50, it's generally a time in their lives where they do start taking some inventory or taking stock of where they are in their life, and starting to think about the next phase in their life. So fortunately, being in your 50s is not viewed the same way as I viewed it when I was a kid. So I'm hoping that the 50s are the new 30s. As somebody who's 48, going to be 49 in a few months, that being part of that 50 and over crowd is rapidly approaching. So that's where there aren't too many diet books that are specifically targeting that specific age population, and recognizing that once you're in your 50s, you are starting to think about the future. And for many 50 and overs, they're thinking about retirement, or they're looking at their portfolios or their investments. Well, one of the things you want to do is ensure that you're going to be able to make use of those investments, or be able to be healthy to enjoy their retirement. So, now's the time to start taking stock and inventory about where are you, how healthy are you, where would you like to be, and what are some of the changes that you can make in your diet, in your lifestyle, to not only support being healthy in your 50s, but ensuring you're going to be healthy in your 60s and 70s and 80s, and so on. So that's why the book is geared for the 50 and over crowd. But quite honestly, it's applicable to anybody of any age. You don't have to only be 50 to purchase the book. It's just that's the niche audience that we were going for.
Yeah, and I think your priorities are completely different. Just a lot of things are, the time constraints that you have are going to be different. And I find that also with my clients, talking about just basic nutrition for somebody in their 50s is completely different for somebody in their 20s. Like the priorities, budget, time constraints, all of that is just, it's a completely different life. And so I love that you've made that focus. And something that you said also that is very rare, and I just wanted to clarify, was that the detox process, gradual, this G word that you said, gradual. Can you explain your approach with a gradual detox from sugar and how that may differ from what we see out in the world today?
Well, I think the media has kind of, adulterated the term detox and detoxification. And to the general public, they associate the term detox with some sort of like, uber restrictive, foul tasting drink that they're going to have to consume for 2 or 3 days. And, or they're trying to eat pounds and pounds of kale in their NutriBullet and drink all of these, brown, greenish, sludgy type drinks. So, um, and for the basis of the book, Sugar Detox, it's detoxing on multiple levels. So, supporting the organs of detoxification. So when we think of your liver, your kidneys, your intestinal tract, the major organs of detoxification, supporting them. But, we talk about like device detoxes. So kind of weaning ourselves off of how much time we spend on our devices. So that's the kind of approach I've taken with even the sugar detox is, detoxing in terms of scaling back, slowly reducing the sources of sugar and the sources of processed carbohydrates, and thus opting for foods that are going to support the organs of detoxification. So it's not like a 3-day or a 3-week quick fix. Some of those programs are really great, but the types of diets and structure of those programs are rarely sustainable for the long haul. And since we're focusing on the 15 over crowd, I really wanted to empower them with some tools that are going to be realistic and sustainable. So that way, they don't stick with something uber restrictive for 3 weeks. And then as soon as they're done, they're like, oh my gosh, my 21 days are over. Where's the beer or where's the candy bar? It's really giving them a realistic roadmap that they're making those gradual changes to support, long-term permanent change, not just a quick fix. Does that answer that?
Yeah, completely. And I'm really excited. I have like a soft spot for authors who are like ready to launch their book, and I've done it a bunch of times, and it's just so exciting. And it's just like it's you never know, like you hope that it's going to turn out great, but you don't really know, so you're just really excited, and I'm really excited for you. It's a huge labor of love to put all your ideas and concepts and everything that you've worked with clients on and everything into a succinct package where people can actually act on these things. So I'm really excited for you. And I guess my final question, and probably the most important one that I've asked Dr. Dana, is where can people find you? Where can they get your books? How can they connect with you? Tell us all of the things.
Well, both books are available on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, online, however you choose to order your books. The stem cell book is already, available in print. The sugar detox for 50 plus on all of the online book retailers. If people want to reach out to me, they're more than welcome to email me just at drdana.elia@gmail.com. They can also reach out on social media. So you can find me on Instagram and Facebook, but email is probably the easiest way. And then my practice is Fusion Integrative Health and Wellness. They can reach out through the website as well, which is just fusionihw.com.
I will include all those links down below this video, or if you're listening to this audio, I will put all of that in the show notes, so you don't have to worry about a thing, and you can just click, click, click and get where you need to go. Dr. Dana, thank you very much for coming on the show today and educating all of us on stem cells and how all of that works and inflammation, just everything. I'm really excited for your next book to come out, and thanks again for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a great pleasure to talk to you.
I hope, like me, you learned a bunch from today's episode. It's so great to have you here. Thanks for watching until the end. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, you can do that there. Just click the little bell. We come up with videos about-ish every week-ish. And all of our interviews for the podcast are also posted here on YouTube, so you can watch the video event of each of our episodes. And as I mentioned before, if you want to reach Dr. Dana for any reason or get one of her books, you can do so down below. I've included all the links there. And also, before you leave, one last thing. I've put together a free guide on starting your ketogenic diet. You can click that link and it'll take you to the free guide. All you got to do is put in your first name, email address, and I will send it to you. So I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you next week for another episode. Bye.